everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Public Opinion Show with your host, Pam Morton. And I cannot believe that we are already in April. This is crazy. Also, it's National Minority Health Awareness Month. And the next show that we're going to have, I'm going to be really dipping into that. But it's also Eclipse Month. And can you believe we are going to have an eclipse? And Cleveland, Ohio is in the path of totality. So I'm excited. So Vanetta and I plan on doing a show, hopefully, on the day of the eclipse, and we are ready. We have our eclipse glasses. I got Orbit gum. I got eclipse gum. We got moon pies, Milky Ways, Starburst, all of that. But anyway, today we are going to be having a part 2 to the segment that I had about strong black women. And the first segment was about strong black women, aggressive or assertive. And I said I was going to have a part 2 because there's still so much more to this conversation. So this week we are going to have strong women, strong black women. Can they be vulnerable? And that's going to be the question of the week. But I wanted to have this because people after that last segment were saying, oh, I believe this, I believe that. Everybody had an opinion about it. So I want to hear from my guest this week and find out what she has to say. As always, if you like the show, make sure that you like and subscribe to the show. Follow us on Facebook as well as YouTube. And if you can't watch the show, listen on the go wherever you get your podcasts. All right, so let's get started and meet our guest. Camilya Williams holds a Master's of Education and has served a combined total of 18 years in the healthcare arena, along with experience serving underserved populations. She now serves as a care manager at CSU. By using a whole person approach and seeing everyone through an emotionally intelligent lens, she is able to serve with excellence. Her research highlights the struggles faced by women of color on their journey through higher academia and as employees in higher academia. All right, so let's welcome our guest. Thank you so much for agreeing to be a participant on the show this week. And I cannot wait to hear everything that you have to say about the subject. But like I said before, this is part 2 of Strong Black Women. And the question before was, aggressive or assertive. So I do want you to have the opportunity to just speak about that first, and then we're going to dive into the question of the week. Okay. And the public opinion question of the week this week is, strong black women, can they be vulnerable? All right, so I want you to have the opportunity to answer that first question about strong black women, aggressive or assertive. So what do you think about that?
I think you can be aggressive or assertive when necessary. I think a lot of people automatically assume that a black woman is being aggressive when she attempts to defend her stance. Mm-hmm. If I feel something, I'm going to speak on it. And my tone shouldn't be judged at all the times. I shouldn't be judged because this is how I feel. So if I'm going to be assertive, I'm going to stand with it. If I need to be aggressive, I'm going to stand with it. I think it's a time and it's a place for everything under the sun.
And that's what we talked about too. It just depends on the situation also. And you know, a lot of times people will look at certain things and I don't know why, but a lot of times a white woman or a black woman can be saying the same thing but be looked at in a whole different way. So I'm glad that you said that, and I agree with that. And so now we're going to pick up from that on the strength of black women. And the reason why I wanted you on the show was because I had the pleasure of listening to you do a presentation, and this was the National Coalition of 100 Black Women in Cleveland. And can you just briefly say what that presentation was about, you know, and then we'll pick up from the public opinion question for this week.
So we really talked about the strong black woman archetype, and I wanted to dive deeper into it. So I call myself Camilya Williams, Coach Camilya Williams, and I call myself the gardener. I believe everybody is a garden, and it is our job to water our own gardens. So I wanted to go into self-care, That's something that's super important with dealing with being a strong Black woman. About checking your circle. What kind of other women do you keep around you? Not just your sisters, but your sisters as well. Because Black women, we call each other sisters. We may refer to our women of other colors as sisters. And I believe we need all of them, you know, to make our lives. We have to work together to make our lives better things, to make our world better things, because women, we are natural leaders of our homes, on our jobs. It's just what we do. And we may not always get the credit, but we need a safe space, a sister circle to come to, so we can come and say, in this moment, I need to be vulnerable. In this moment, I need you to help me be strong. And just making sure that all those things align up and that we don't forget who we are. We wear so many hats and have so many labels put upon us from so many other people, but who are we outside of our titles?
Oh, I love that. And that is a good segue into what we were talking about. But I do like what you said about we hold so many hats. And we do, as women, just as women, not even just as Black women, but as women, women always have to be multitaskers. We have to do, you know, we take care of the family. If you have a career, you're doing things for your job. You're taking care of your children. You're just making sure everything is running smoothly. But then you have to think, who's making sure I'm running smoothly? And a lot of times, like you said, I love that you said you have to water your own garden. Yeah, and have your sister circle. So it's nice to water your own garden, but it's also nice to have some helpers with that too.
Space,
you know, because when you go to a farm or you don't just see one person out there just planting. You know, if you're going to have a successful farm, you're going to have planners, you're going to have people to dig it up, you're going to have people who work together. But it's good to know, and like you said, you got to be able to be equipped to water your own garden and to, you know, and to see and tend to your own needs, and that's wonderful too. So let's get into that whole vulnerability type of a thing, because when we're talking about women doing so much, and then you're seen as being strong, and if something happens, and then you show some weakness, then or just show vulnerability, then a lot of times people are like, well, you're strong, you can be able to suck it up or whatever. So you want to speak to that?
So I think people forget, Kimberly Crenshaw is a great researcher, and she coined the term intersectionality. And what it talks about, it speaks to all the different things that makes us unique. And specifically, it could be really given to Black women when I really look at that lens, an intersectionality lens. I am all these things and cannot be vulnerable in those spaces. My grandmother used to call it, come on girl, get out here and let's turn the dirt over, right? You can't plant anything without making sure you turn the dirt over. You have to cultivate it, because if you don't break the dirt up, the nutrients cannot get down into the soil, right? And I believe our souls are soil, right? And we want to make sure that in those spaces, like a vulnerable seed, if you have to plant it, you have to care for it, cover it up, so it doesn't get blown away by the wind and the storms of life, right? And then making sure that it can still get the water and the fertilizer that it needs. So that means showing up in spaces where you can be safe. Also requiring people, right, to respect your vulnerability. Because if you always show up as strong, you know, then people will treat you in such a way. We have to put some of that blame back on ourselves as well. I don't tell people, don't just call me strong Black woman. That is a part of me, but I am resilient. I am smart. I am intelligent. I am gentle, warm, loving. I am all those things.
Right. And you can be all of those things. And I think that's what needs to be recognized, is that sometimes you just need to cry, or sometimes you just need to get away, or to be by yourself, you know. And it doesn't mean that there's anything so much wrong with you. That it just means that that's what you need. And though, if you do find that there are things that are going on with you emotionally, or that you need other help, then you can go and get that help. And I like what you talked about in your presentation about unfortunately what happened with Professor Candia Bailey, and how she committed suicide, and she amidst believing or saying that she was being bullied, and she had other mental health issues most likely, and she did. But what came out about a week and a half ago was that there was an investigation that was done, and it was determined that the president of Lincoln University did not bully her, and they were like, that basically just didn't happen. But they wanted to recognize, yes, she probably was going through something, and they will try to make some changes or whatever.
Right.
So in that instance, that's an example of, you know, she still was not being heard. Even through her death, she still was not being heard. You know, it was glossed over, and maybe they were happy that she had some other mental health issues, so they could just put it on that. So what do you say about that? Even, and you know, people might look at her, hey, you were a professor, you know, and then even the lady at Harvard, you know, when she resigned,
correct,
here she is the president, but she had to resign. And so what do you say about that, or what do you say to women who find themselves in situations like that?
I really believe that we are at an intersection of I love me and I'm in love with me, right? And I'll be darned if I'm going to let somebody take the love I have for myself away. Again, on all levels, this woman was successful, right? On all levels, intelligent, beautiful, to say the least, doing well at her job, or so she thought. And I believe everybody's going to have their opinion, and I have my own. But I just firmly believe that her death should be a call to action to all of us. Are we taking care of ourselves? Are we remaining in spaces where we are treated badly and allowing ourselves to be subject to some of those things? Because we know in certain spaces, people are not going to hear us, right? People are not going to hear us, and it is unfortunate that her life is gone. That campus will never be the same. Nobody can take her place, can gloss over the work that she has done and what she's put forth. So what do we do now? What do we learn from her death? So her death is not in vain to us.
Right.
And what it taught me is, if I am in a space where I'm not being treated well, it may be best for me to exit, if that will save me.
Okay.
If that will save me.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of people probably find themselves even in jobs and things like that, where they're like, you know what, I'm staying here because I need the money. You know,
I need the insurance.
You know, I need all the things that go along with it.
Or
but at what expense are we doing?
I worked hard to be here.
Right.
And at times you have to say to yourself, is this okay for me? You know, she had a right to stand up for everything she believed in. And yes, they could say it was other things going on with her. I respect that.
Right.
But also, what are you going to do with your staff going forward, even though you've proved in your investigation that he had nothing to do with it? But will you work on not just diversity practices, but inclusivity practices to make sure that people's lived experiences are heard? Because a lot of people like numbers.
Well, you know, they're trying to get away all this DEI.
And that's a huge thing. I will be on the soapbox all day talking about that, because I think people want to just wrap it around the African American community, but you can't do that. It's all of us. And when we get back into the space of when it happens to one of us, it happens to all of us. I wouldn't care what color you are. If I saw injustices happening to you, it is my nature to want to stand up for you, because that's how I show up in the world. So again, making sure that we are willing to say to a space goodbye if necessary.
And that takes a lot of courage.
It does.
It really, you know, it takes a lot of courage to say, you know what, I gotta go.
I have to go.
I gotta go.
You know, how much does our peace cost us? You know, it can cost you your life.
Right.
And I don't want to see that happen to anyone else. It is unfortunate. It's an unfortunate loss. You know, I cried for days after her death, because you could just feel it. You could just feel it, to see another Black woman lost to a traumatic experience. Because no matter what anybody wants to say, it is traumatizing to go to work and feel as if you're being bullied.
Right.
You know, and you wanting to tell your story, and even though, again, they root against it, it was her narrative. And we all have to be responsible about telling our stories, whether people like it or not.
Right. And it may be hard to hear, you know, but, you know, people have their own truths.
Exactly.
And just because you may not see it that way, it's still important to listen to people. Because if somebody's telling you, this is how I feel, then we have to find a way to honor that, or at least respect it. You don't have to agree with it. You don't have to like it. And you don't have to like
respect
it.
Me.
But at least respect that enough to say, and let's just say, for instance, if she had gone to him and, you know, whatever conversation, and if he was coming from the perspective of, no, I'm not, or whatever. But that's the thing. Maybe he should have said, well, let's sit down and talk about what you're saying.
Right.
You know, or maybe I didn't even realize. Because sometimes you may not realize that you're, doing, or somebody feels a certain way about you until they actually say it.
When you're accustomed to being able to move in certain spaces in a certain kind of way, some people have that privilege.
Right.
As Black women, we do not.
Right. And that's the thing.
We
don't. We don't. Because if she was accused of being a bully, and depending on who she was bullying, I'm sure they would look at it in a whole different way, you know.
And that's historically, we've seen that happen over and over and over again. And again, that's why I say we have to create our own safe spaces for us to let our hair down, for us to cry, scream, vent, and come up with steps of action for us to be able to work through those things.
And that's why I love what you said about having this whole sister circle and having people, and you know, sometimes people would say something like, you know, you have your front row of people, but you know what, I would prefer more than a front row, I like a backstage people. I like the crew. I like people who are going to have my back, who I know I can turn to when I leave the stage, and they'll be there for me. The front row people usually like to be there because that's the best seat in the house. It doesn't mean that they earned it or whatever they did. They are there, you know, maybe for the good things. You know, but I want somebody who's going to be on my in the back. You know, I want to have somebody who's going to be on my road crew.
I agree.
Those are the best friends to have. And those are people who will be with you whether you are successful or not. You know,
I tell people, if you are not evaluating your circle at least every 6 months, you are doing yourself a disservice. I have my shopping friends. I don't tell them my secrets. I have my confidant. You know what I mean? I have people who I talk to about higher academia because others are like, I don't want to talk about research. That's not for me. Right? You have to put people in certain groups and be okay with that. And you can promote them to things. I have people who have been my ride or dies, you know, since I was in kindergarten, and they are my real safe space. So it's okay to put people in groups and to understand how people show up in your lives. And if you have people in your life who do not reciprocate, to you, you need to let them go, because an ATM will be in a negative balance if you just keep on withdrawing money. So,
now that's the truth. I love all of that. Now tell me about this care manager. What is that, and what do you do?
So I'm a care manager,
and this is at Cleveland State.
At Cleveland State University. I just moved into that role. I serve under George Smith Whitfield, and he is an amazing individual. What we do is we work to make sure that the students are engaged, that they feel like they are belonging at CSU, and that they have well-being. And so for me, again, I call myself Coach Camilya the Gardner Williams. I'm really big about all wellness. So when my daughter, she attempted suicide, and after she came out of that and began to do her own work, she stated to me, she said, "Mommy, in all wellness, I stand humbly." Right? And so I work with my students through that. I don't want to just see you succeed academically. I want you to succeed socially. I want you to succeed with your physical health, your mental health, your financial health.
It's a whole holistic.
It is a whole holistic approach that I like to use to service students, because most students I see, they are in crisis when they come to me. You know, from anything, from being harassed, from not doing good, you know, in their classes due to maybe someone passed away, or maybe they have an illness. They come to me, I say, in broken pieces, and it is my job to teach them, to empower them. So I don't want to do the work for them. I encourage them to do the work for themselves. So if I can empower you, then you as well can empower others when you are here.
That. So is that something that's unique to Cleveland State, or is that something that a lot of universities have?
A lot of universities do not have that. That is one reason that I love Cleveland State. I call myself the super duper Viking. I did my undergraduate and my graduate program at Cleveland State University, and I made it my business, right, to get back on the campus, because at times I didn't feel like I belonged, you know, when I was there. And I said, you can't complain about something without doing something about it. So I said, as soon as I got the chance, I would be back on that campus serving.
I love that. And you know, Cleveland State is the type of a university where a lot of people are working other jobs or have families, you know, unlike like a Kent State or some of the other colleges where, you know, more younger, you know, population of students. So I think that's a wonderful program to have, because a lot of people probably are coming with a whole lot of stuff.
With a whole lot of baggage. And I think when you have a safe space to unpack it, because some people have never been given permission to say, I am hurting.
And that's why we come all the way back to this vulnerability.
Exactly.
And I love that, because you said sometimes people haven't been given permission. And I think as strong Black women, a lot of times you feel like, I don't have permission to do this. I have too much to do. I don't have time. But then until it hits you. And like I said, when you have all this on your shoulders, when you're doing so much, it's only so much a frame can support.
That's right.
Until once you collapse, then people are looking down at you like, well, what happened? You know, rather than understanding, you didn't see me when I was, you know, I may have been up here, but I'm sweating. My eyes are, you know, you didn't see it.
I call it like watching the duck. It is beautiful to watch, but if you go under that water, those little feet, baby, those little feet are going. Those little feet are going, and people like to just see the stoicness of the duck, but not really looking at the work the duck has to do to stay afloat. And I feel like as Black women, we have always been just like this duck.
Our feet just on time. We look good, you know. We look the part.
You know, we look the part, but at times we are just trying to stay afloat. And being able to be vulnerable is big. I always tell women, stop acting as if you are a teacup on the shelf waiting for somebody to pour into you, when you are the garden for which all creation eats and all things form. Have you watered your garden lately? Pouring into yourself is big. You have to be vulnerable enough to say, if nobody pours into me, what am I doing for myself every day?
And then what are you going to get out of it?
And what am I going to get out of it? And if I can cultivate my own garden, you know, making sure that I do surround myself with the right people, making sure I know who I need to know and who to say no to. It's also a big thing.
Saying no sometimes, and that's a problem a lot of women have. I have some friends who say, I just have a hard time saying no. And I'm like, I don't have a hard time saying, I say no, I'll see if I can. You know, but it's not from a spirit of meanness, but I just know I can't do everything. And I'm not going to try to do everything. If I can make it, I'll make it. If I can't, I can't. You know, so I think all of those things are just so important. I really appreciate everything you said. Now, is there anything else that you want to add or say about this topic at all? You take it away.
I just want to tell people to be safe and to apologize to Black women, you know, just all across the world, to say, you know, I'm going to stand in proxy in this moment and say, I'm going to say to you all, I'm sorry.
I like that.
I am sorry people didn't listen to you. I'm sorry you were in places where people didn't protect you. I am sorry that people didn't give you permission to have vulnerable moments, even when you experience so much trauma. I stand in proxy to say I'm sorry, because for a lot of us, we have to accept the sorry we will never forget from the people who have hurt us, harmed us, but they were supposed to protect us and love us. So again, I stand in proxy and I say to you, I am so sorry. Because if we don't forgive, you got to have forgiveness in your heart.
Right.
Even if you're not going to get the sorry, because then it does make us hard, right? And I don't need you to do anything for me, because I've always had to do it by myself.
That's where a lot of, but that's where a lot of us are. A lot of women are at that point. You know, they're like, I don't need a man, I don't need you, because I can take care of myself, I can do this. But were we meant to do that?
Right.
We weren't meant to just be, you know, God didn't design it like that. You know, he had created a helpmate.
Correct.
You know.
Correct.
And so I love that. I really like that. Thank you so much.
You are so welcome.
This has been a wonderful conversation. I really have enjoyed having you, and thank you so much. And I hope that you have enjoyed this as well. I so enjoyed her. I hope that you all enjoy her too. That was a wonderful conversation. I think we hit on some really important points. I like the part that she said about cultivating and watering your own garden. Also, oh my God, was that not profound? We have to give forgiveness and ask for forgiveness. And I thought that was so important. That was so profound. So I hope you enjoyed that segment as much as I did. If you enjoy watching the show, continue to follow us on Facebook and YouTube. Like and subscribe to the show. And remember, if you can't watch the show, listen on the go wherever you get your podcast. So until next time, I'll see you for another episode of Public Opinion. Bye-bye.